You would think the story of Count Dracula as a product was sucked dry multiple times over decades ago. But as it turns out, there is still a little bit of that good old sticky red stuff to be siphoned out for the enjoyment of the crowds. I stand by that statement. Seeing as Dracula doesn't eat meat, he drinks blood. But you get the gist. Last Voyage of the Demeter. The fateful story of the doomed ship that carried Dracula from the old country all the way to merry old England. London to be precise. Now, normally that voyage is glossed over. Although in Nosferatu, we do see a few things of what happens. A couple times in Francis Ford Coppola's version of the story, we see a few things that happen. But we don't get a detailed account until now. And speaking of Nosferatu and Coppola's version of the movie, this story borrows heavily from both films to shape this version of Dracula. He's a demonic bat, but in human form he looks like a sickly ghoul. And the effects and the suit actor did a really good job. He's kept in shadow mostly, so you can't really see what he looks like till the end. And the final sequence is done mostly in CGI, but it's good CGI. It allows the monster to be fully realized without too much difficulty. But thankfully, we do get some practical work too. Because as monstrous as Dracula can be, there are times when he looks downright pathetic. Like Smeagol, even. Until he strikes. That's his power. He can look pathetic, but in reality he's a powerful creature of the night. But he's not the only character we're looking at. There's a human cast. A black doctor who, in the near turn of the century, was a rarity. And yeah, that's a topic for discussion. His character is one of science. He's a Van Helsing type. But he's not opposed to getting his knuckles bloody. So he's kind of like Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing. Mixed with the classical gentleman Van Helsing. He uses transfusions to try and help some of the crew, well, some of the characters, not necessarily crew. So he's smart, and I think if he and Van Helsing had met, then they would have worked together very well. Then you got the, I believe, same actor who played Captain of the Titanic, playing Captain of the Demeter. And I don't want to say typecasting, but the guy's really good at playing a captain. His story arc was tragic, but also fairly compelling. The rest of the sailors, including the foreign guy from Ant-Man's entourage, and the White Rhino Jungle Fury Power Ranger, that guy, make an appearance, and several others. And they're all varying from lovable, rough and tumble pirates. Well, not pirates, but seafarers who could be pirates, like Caribbean-style pirates, to guys who you don't really shed a tear for. The crew dynamic is tense but organic. All the actors did a really good job. And yes, there's also a kid and a lady in the cast. The lady's story, which I'm not going to spoil here, is compelling, but not in a Mary Sue annoying way, you know? She's capable once she gets her bearings, but she's not unlikable as a character. You want her and the doc to hook up. And I'm not going to say whether or not they do, because spoilers. And the kid, I think he represents the innocence lost when the reality of the world, represented by Dracula, and some of the rougher crewmen, rear their ugly heads. And for a kid, this young actor did very well. They gave him just enough to have his character be believable, but they also gave him scenes that were worthy of much older actors. And this kid managed to pull it off quite decently. If he's going to be in the business for a long time, then he's going places. If this is his one and only role, then I hope he does well in whatever job he chooses in the future. Because if he's half as good as whatever he chooses as he is at acting in this role, he's going to go places. And then we come to the final character. I'm not counting the animals because they're just sort of window dressing. The final character is the ship itself. She starts out majestic, like a grungy version of the Titanic. Yes, I'm coming back to that. She's a working class vessel, and both ship and crew are grizzled but not sour. You can see how once upon a time the old ship might have been the jewel of some merchant's fleet. But now she's a workhorse, and she's still got some kicks left in her. But over time, as the sun sets and the shadows grow and Dracula starts stalking his victims, the ship becomes like a tomb, like a prison. The people on board are suddenly trapped. And it's very atmospheric. And that's not even counting when Dracula turns into fog, which he's known to do. So no spoilers there. You feel the isolation of the people on board as land fades away and you have to rely on navigational charts and compasses and such in order to orient yourself. People don't seem to realize it, but you can become extremely isolated even in modern times. The outback of Australia, the savanna of Africa, the North and South Poles, the American desert, and yes, the ocean. If you're not prepared, you will literally become the last person on the planet because everyone else has vanished. And it is very unsettling. The music, they decided on it being orchestral, which was a good choice. Sorry for the abrupt change, but I got to keep this review going. The music was orchestral, and that was a good choice, because a movie with Count Dracula needs to have some orchestral flair in order to maintain the atmosphere of the old world invading the new. That's why music is key, because the musical score in this case really sold the drama for me. Because I don't think Kid Rock or Marilyn Manson would have been a good fit for the score of a film set in 1897. The pace. It was good. The first section of the movie got right to the point. The middle section was a bit of a slow burn to build up the tension of being isolated with a potential threat. And the climax was not too fast, but not too slow. And we actually get to see the Demeter wash up on shore in a dramatic fashion, which they've never done before, actually. It's always the aftermath. But this time we actually get to see the sequence, and it was epic. Overall, I thought Last Voyage of the Demeter did some really good stuff with the classic character of Count Dracula. It gave him a more demonic, more primal look based on Nosferatu and Coppola's version of Dracula when he was a werebat, but done in a more animal corpse-like fashion. And yeah, Dracula has turned into a bat monster before. I'm looking at you, Van Helsing, starring Hugh Jackman. But this time it was different in a good way. He felt like a mummified creature that had just woken up. And that made him more terrifying. Especially when you could tell that he was intelligent and knew exactly what he was doing. The savage monster was smart. And they're always scarier when they're smart. Honestly, I think this film should kick off a retry of the Universal Dark franchise. I even have a couple ideas for a sequel that could start introducing new characters. But that would be spoiler territory for this film, and I don't want to do that. So I'll just leave it here. This is Mr. J signing out and reminding you, always check the cargo manifest, and if you find dirt, book another boat. Preferably one of those ocean liners with the decent buffet. So long as the buffet is not long pork. Happy sailing, folks.